way you find the inverse of a function algebraically, you take the x and y and you switch them. So the first step, take your y and your x and you switch them. So you have x equals 3y plus 1. That's your first step in finding the inverse. You take your x, y, you switch them. After you switch your x and y coordinates, you solve for y. You look confused. Huh? All right. After you take your x and y and you switch them, you solve for y. Subtract 1 from both sides. X minus 1 equals 3y. Isolate the y by dividing both sides by 3. And we are left with y equals x minus 1 over 3. This function is the inverse. This is the inverse of the original function. Y equals 3x plus 1. The inverse is x minus 1 over 3. Please copy this example into your notebooks. We're being asked to find the inverse of this quadratic function. I'll take a volunteer to walk me through this one. You know the instructions already from the code.
So it means the x equals, and then everything else where you just put 2 on it.
Yeah, so read it to me.
So the x equals 1 minus 2y squared plus y.
Exactly. So the first step when finding the inverse is always to take your x, y, and switch them around. After you switch them, isolate the y. Somebody other than Nicole can have a volunteer other than Nicole Brianna. How are we going to isolate the y? Subtract 5 from both sides. X minus 5 equals the quantity of y minus 2y squared. Somebody other than Nicole and Brianna. Somebody other than Nicole and Brianna. We're not done because y is not isolated. Michael. Exactly. Take the square root of both sides. You all remember when you just take the square root of an exponent, it cancels it out. So we take the square root of both sides. But Michael, the first way you said works as well too. It's just going to be a little bit longer. So if we do the square root of both sides, that cancels out. Now we have 1 minus 2y. Does everyone remember this here? How we just get rid of those exponents? We just square both sides. Take the square root of both sides. When we write the radical symbol, do you all remember what we must write every single time we manually draw the radical symbol over anything? Plus or minus. You have to put the plus or minus. Whenever you manually write a radical symbol, you have to write plus or minus. So we have plus or minus, radical x minus 5 equals equals 1 minus 2y. Almost there. Somebody other than Nicole, Brianna, and Michael. Someone new. Tessa. Subtract 1 from both sides. This cancels out. The only thing left on the right side is negative 2y. Fine. Just minus 1, plus or minus, x minus 5. And last but not least, not Tessa, not Michael, not Brianna, not Nicole. Isolate the y. 5. Divide both sides by negative 2. That cancels out. The only thing left on the right side is y. It's positive y. And on the left side, the left expression is negative 1 plus or minus square root of x minus 5 over negative 2. Y is isolated. This is the inverse. Remember, the inverse has the little negative 1 over it. It could be just y, or it could be f. negative 1 of x. This is how we show the inverse. We put that little negative 1 exponent to show that it's the inverse. That's 6-7. Any questions on 6-7? All right, let's go on to 6-8. 6-8 is nothing new. Nothing new. We're just going to refresh your memory. But this should take no longer than 1 minute. Every chapter, every single chapter we've done so far, we talked about transformations. And we're going to talk about transformations for the rest of the year. At the end of every chapter, we're going to talk about transformations. So just to refresh your memory, in chapter 4, we dealt with quadratics. This was chapter 4. And the vertex form for quadratics is y equals a x minus h squared plus k. That was chapter 4. Chapter 5, we did cubics. Cubics, this is the parent function of a cubic function, and the general form for cubics was y equals a x minus h to the third plus k. Everyone remember doing this. K is vertical, up and down. H is horizontal, left and right. A, this is compression or stretch. And if there's a negative, there's a reflection. Now we're up to chapter 6. In chapter 6, the parent function is y equals radical x. We've been talking about radicals and exponents all chapter. This is the parent function of square roots. And the general form is just like the rest of them. There's nothing new here. I can't tell you something you don't already know. K is up and down. H is left and right. A is stretch or compression. If you see a negative in front of A, that just means there's a reflection. So your assignment is odd. No, it's even, right? It's even. So let's do a couple odd ones, and then you could just take the rest of the period to do your assignment. Let's see if we can get somebody to tell the class what's going on. Number 13. What's going on with number 13? How would you describe it? How would you describe that transformation? Number 13. Nicole, how would you describe this? 6 to the left. Right? Everyone remember this? 6 to the left. How about number 17? Actually, just do number 19. Call it a day. How about number 19? How would you describe number 19? Gina?
To the left, 2, down 1.
2 to the left. 1 down. And the 1/2. Not a problem. Does anyone remember what the 1/2 means? Michael? Not a stretch. Compression. Compression by half. Does everyone remember how to tell the difference between a stretch and a compression? Can you explain the difference?
If it's over 1, it's a stretch.
Yes.
And if it's under 1, it's a compression.
Yes. So if it's bigger than 1, it's a stretch. If it's between 0 and 1, it's a compression. The absolute value. So this would be compressed by a factor of 1/2. All right, one more, and then we're done. Number 17. Number 17. And then you could go ahead and break off into groups, put in headphones, or whatever you like. Number 17. Jordan.
What is the left two?
To the left 2.
Reflection.
A reflection.
And a stretch of 5.
Stretch of 5. Did everyone hear that? Why reflection? Can you explain why reflection?
Because it's a negative.
Negative. Whenever you see a negative in front of A, it's a reflection. So is everyone's memory refreshed? This is not new material at all. The only thing different is that we have a radical symbol instead of that. That's the only difference. Everything else is the same. Yeah. Now you got 22 minutes, a lot of time. You can get all of this done in class. Yeah, and what we did yesterday.